Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hunter. Mind capacity starting from Devil Fruit. Chapter 1. Phew. In the silent room, there was the sound of inaudible breathing, long and continuous. After a while, the sound of breathing gradually disappeared. Huang Quan slowly opened his deep black and white eyes and stared at his right hand, which was faintly glowing with white light. At this moment, the white light around his right hand looked misty and uncertain like boiling water vapor. This is the life energy that naturally flows out of the human body. It can also be called vitality, lifespan, or even the most universal and mysterious name, qi. For ordinary people who don't understand, it is difficult to feel the presence of qi. And not being able to feel qi means that it can only be allowed to pass slowly over time. Just like the life of an ordinary person, the speed at which qi passes is also different due to different physical constitutions, which affects the length of life. Feel the form of qi. The passage of stagnant qi. Even controlling the movement of qi. This is something you will never be able to do unless you understand its principles. Now, after spending 3 months, Huang Quan finally managed to retain the flow of qi based on the conceptual knowledge system in his mind. From now on, it will also mean he has already taken a step towards the threshold of cultivation called Nian. But, relative to this, the end of the fusion with the original owner is truly a relief. Thinking of this, a complex look flashed in Huang Quan's eyes. 3 months ago, as a pirate fan, he bought a green edible devil fruit from a certain online store out of curiosity. As a result, I fainted immediately after eating it. Until he woke up again, he found that he had traveled through time into the dying body named Ma Quan. At that time, Huang Quan could be said to be in an inexplicable state of confusion. Especially since his mind was broken into countless memory fragments, instead of helping him understand the current situation, it actually aggravated his mental disorder. Coupled with the fatal injuries originally suffered by this body. For a time, Huang Quan, who had traveled through time, was trapped in a painful cycle of near-death. After finally struggling to survive the near-death state, he gradually began to recover. This gave him time to absorb and integrate this memory named Ma Quan bit by bit. Fortunately, the fatal wound on this body happened to be on the back of the head, resulting in a near-death situation. But it also gave him an excuse to lose his memory and appease the worries of his only family. Subsequently, Huang Quan was recovering from his injuries while trying to digest the memory fragments in his mind. It wasn't until I absorbed a certain memory fragment related to Meteor Street and combined it with other more general fragments of knowledge that I realized that I had entered the world of Hunter x Hunter. Moreover, it is also the Meteor Street known as the Forgotten Land in the Hunter world. So after understanding the basic situation, realizing that this was Huang Quan in the Hunter world, feeling the urgency of the crisis, he took the initiative to try the practice method of Nian that was already somewhat vague in his memory. After nearly 3 months of groping forward, perhaps due to the absorption of the memory of this body, the gradually stronger spirit has become more and more clear about qi. Until today, when all the memory fragments have been digested, I have also entered the threshold called Nian. It can be said to be a double happiness. But, this is just the beginning. Huang Quan took a deep breath. Adjust your internal and external breathing, concentrate, and imagine that life energy slowly flowing from the body and wrapping around the surface of the body. Learn Nian and control Nian. This was the first thought that flashed through his mind when he realized that he was wearing Meteor Street. It has nothing to do with anything else, just safety considerations, which is also an extremely urgent matter at the moment. Fortunately, the theoretical knowledge about Nian he read in Hunter x Hunter before traveling through time was indeed useful in this world. Swish, swish, swish. In the silent room, a white light spread like a gentle breeze. Qi, which floats like water vapor, presses towards Huang Quan's body as if it is wrapped and compressed by invisible hands. And as time went by, it wrapped around his body bit by bit, forming a more scattered transparent armor of varying thicknesses. How come it's so fast this time? Huang Quan, who had successfully completed the initial training of Tangle, looked at the barely formed qi armor wrapped around his body with some doubts. Based on his 3 months of cultivation of qi, he originally thought that it would take a lot of time to transform qi from the state of floating vapor. Unexpectedly, The first time I tried it, I could barely do it in less than 5 minutes. Is it because all the memory fragments have been absorbed? As a result, this body's cultivation qualifications have improved. Too conceptual. Thinking about this, Huang Quan shook his head. No matter what the reason is. But in terms of results, that's a good thing. No need to get too hung up on it. Now that qi can be reluctantly entangled at this moment, the next stage is to strengthen and master the speed of entanglement so that it can become instinctive. Presumably to that extent, you can form an all-round defensive armor on your body with no blind spots, right? Moreover, being able to trap the qi that flows all the time in the body with entanglement also cuts off the flow of life energy. Things like extending lifespan may not be a problem. Now, it's time to face the reality. Thinking of this, Huang Quan opened his eyes, maintained the tangled state, slowly stood up and walked towards the door. Just about to open the door. Crunch. The wooden door was opened directly from the outside, and a thin and petite figure walked straight in. A girl with pinkish-purple hair and blue eyes walked in carrying 2 bowls of steaming black food. Seeing Huang Quan open the door, she couldn't help but be surprised and said, "Where are you going to go during mealtime? The injury is almost healed." Pointing to the scarred wound on the back of his head, Huang Quan responded calmly and briefly according to the taciturn image in his memory. "My memory has also recovered somewhat. I want to go out and have a look, Sister Maki." Fortunately, he absorbed Ma Quan's memory. Otherwise, the problem of language communication alone would cause Huang Quan to get into a headache. "That's it." Maki nodded after hearing this, walked around Huang Quan and walked to the only wooden table in the room, placing the black food on the table. "Quan, no matter where you want to go, you'd better eat first. You can't find food outside." After hearing this, Huang Quan nodded silently, came to the other side of the table and sat down, picked up the black bread-like food in front of him, and silently bit and chewed it. This food called rye bread is the food he has been eating every day since he traveled to this world. To be precise, he had never seen any other food besides rye bread. The bread is as hard as slate and requires saliva to soften it before eating. If you bite down hard from the beginning, your teeth may be forced out. Although Huang Quan has been accustomed to the rough taste of this rye bread for 3 months. But occasionally I still think of all the delicious food I once enjoyed. For example, the spicy chicken that comes to mind right now. As the saliva secreted more and more, Huang Quan didn't take much time to finish the rye bread in his hand. Then, he turned to look at Maki, who was chewing bread slowly. She has a petite figure, about 11 years old, short and pinkish-purple hair, and slightly cold ice-blue eyes. She wears white clothes similar to martial arts uniforms, and a short skirt and black tight shorts. Although she looked very cute, Huang Quan had no other thoughts at all. Not to mention that he is now about the same height and age. Just the other person's name made Huang Quan couldn't help but sigh secretly. After all, whether it is the very similar image when he was a child, or the name Maki plus the meteor street he is currently in. This was not told to him outright. This little girl's future will be that of a numbered member of the Phantom Troop, a thief group that engages in all kinds of heinous crimes around the world. However, as a child now, she is Huang Quan's sister. Although they are not biological relatives, after spending the past 11 years together, they are no different from siblings. In Hunter x Hunter, I never heard of Maki having a younger brother. Huang Quan frowned. In the Hunter world, after all, it is a series of adventures unfolded from the perspective of Gon and other protagonists. But where he was at the moment was obviously different. Judging from Maki's 11-year-old age, it would be at least until she was 23 to 24 years old that a series of things like Yukexons happened. In other words, there will be another 12 or 13 years before the plot of the Hunter world will unfold. And this is when the world line is normal. At this moment, Huang Quan is not very sure whether his arrival will produce a series of butterfly effects. But one thing is for sure. Having absorbed Ma Quan's memory, he will never allow Maki to do something he shouldn't do. For example, the genocide of the Kuluta tribe. Thinking of this, Huang Quan's eyes gradually became dark. "Quan, what's wrong?" Seeing Izumi staring at him in a daze, Maki, who had finished eating, frowned and said, "Is there something you want to tell me?" After coming back to his senses, Huang Quan couldn't help being stunned after hearing this. Why do you think that? My intuition tells me. Looking at Huang Quan silently, Maki frowned and said, there seems to be something different about you. Quote. Hearing this, Huang Quan's heart tightened, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. I didn't expect that Maki, who was intuitive and accurate in the original work, would have this characteristic at such a young age. However, this is not a problem for Huang Quan. After absorbing the surprise of Ma Quan, strictly speaking, he can still be regarded as Ma Quan itself. But in terms of leadership, it is naturally Huang Quan who has more than 20 years of experience. The memory of only a decade or so has little impact on Huang Quan's worldview. Maybe it's because of the loss and recovery of memory. Huang Quan looked at the other person and said calmly, people who have experienced life and death will always change, right? Spring. Hearing this, Maki's ice blue pupils revealed a hidden murderous intent. He walked silently to Huang Quan and touched the scarred wound on his head. Have you ever remembered who wanted to kill you? No. Huang Quan shook his head and said calmly, I just remembered that after I separated from you that day, I went to pick up things from the garbage mountain on the other side, and was suddenly hit hard on the back of my head. As soon as my vision went dark, I fainted. When you wake up again, you will lose your memory. He didn't lie to Maki about that. In Ma Quan's memory, he was indeed in a coma and dying state due to an inexplicable sneak attack. If Huang Quan had not traveled through time, this body might have been buried by Maki long ago. Don't worry, Quan. Looking at Huang Quan's injury, Maki's cold face was covered with frost. No matter who did it to you, I will definitely find him. She has always loved this person who was her only relative in the world. Unexpectedly, it was just an ordinary separation of picking up supplies, but it almost resulted in an eternal separation. This made Maki extremely angry, and at the same time he kept thinking about who did it. Once she finds him, she will definitely make him regret being born in Meteor Street. The atmosphere was slightly solemn. Holding down Maki's little hand that touched the scar, Huang Quan stood up and looked into her eyes calmly. Of course I should avenge my revenge. Leave it to me, okay? Sister Maki. Quote. Seeing the determined expression in Huang Quan's eyes, Maki couldn't help but be stunned. This was the first time she saw such a determined look in the eyes of her taciturn and introverted brother. Do people really experience such big changes after experiencing life and death? Maki has no intention of worrying about this. But she was looking forward to this change with the other party. After all, in a place like Meteor Street, introverts wouldn't survive long. Quite a while. I see. Withdrawing his little hand that was being held down, Maki nodded silently, turned around and walked out the door. Since the injury is almost healed, let's come over and help dispose of the garbage. After we finish processing this batch, we have to go to the garbage mountain again today. Good. Following Maki out of the bedroom, Huang Quan saw a simple living room of less than 35 square meters. There is not much furniture in the living room. Apart from the necessary wooden seats and a simple separated bathroom, there are no other facilities and equipment. At this moment, stacked in the middle of the living room are old things entangled with a thin thread. Such as a broken radio, a TV full of cracks, an old-looking music box, etc. They are all electrical equipment that seems to be worth dismantling. It's still the old rule, take down all useful things. After that, Maki untied the string and handled the TV in front of him without raising his head. Seeing this, Huang Quan nodded, quickly walked to the other side of the electrical appliance, picked up the screwdriver he had placed next to him, and prepared to start disassembling it. However, a sudden throbbing emerged in his heart. There seemed to be something attracting his attention. Seeing this, Huang Quan had a puzzled look on his face. Following the throbbing feeling, he opened up the pile of electrical appliances in front of him and started rummaging through the feeling of getting closer. Soon, when his right hand touched a rectangular mobile phone that was as big as a big brother, strips of emerald green spiral text formed in the shape of arabesques suddenly appeared in his mind. This is... A hint of surprise flashed in Huang Quan's eyes. Because, the emerald green arabesque-shaped spiral text in his mind was exactly the same as the pattern on the devil fruit-like fruit he had eaten before traveling through time. At that time, he was still marveling at how the merchants could make it so realistic. Unexpectedly, 3 months after traveling through time, I would still see this familiar thing. Could it be that it brought itself into this world? With doubts and thoughts, Huang Quan looked at the strange spiral characters. Although the text was not from any writing system that he was familiar with, he could somehow understand the message it revealed. Lot's missing mobile phone. Quality: ordinary. Year: 34 years. Note: this is the only thing that Lot has remembered for his deceased wife for decades. It contains a strong emotional thought left by its owner, which can be absorbed. Understanding the information revealed in the emerald green threaded font, Huang Quan couldn't suppress the shock in his eyes. What is this? Bring your own identification skills. Goldfinger. Or only things that contain thought will respond to it. If you choose to absorb thoughts, what will happen? For a time, all kinds of thoughts emerged in my mind. Not long after, exhaling slowly, Huang Quan adjusted his breathing, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Now that we have traveled to another world, there is nothing left to be lonely about. The worst outcome is nothing more than death again. Other than that, how much worse could it be? Thinking of this, Huang Quan held the mobile phone as big as a brother in his hand and concentrated his chi to his eyes. Although it is not to the level of condensation, you should be able to see the basic thought. Really, as Huang Quan's eyes were filled with white chi, an extremely weak and invisible black shimmer appeared on the surface of the Lot's missing phone in his hand. In Hunter's world, it is said that people are dying. Various complicated thoughts will be left behind due to various extreme obsessional emotions. Most of these thoughts will be attached to something, thus forming a variety of different thoughts, objects, and antiques. However, the strong emotions of obsession are also different. For example, some things with weak thoughts cannot affect others at all. But if the thought is strong enough, it will cause great harm to the holder or the area. Severe cases may even result in loss of life. Of course, it is also possible that due to the long-term invasion of thoughts-related thoughts will be awakened. As for Huang Quan's Lot's missing cell phone, perhaps it's because of the remaining modern things, plus the word mind above, which is mainly about nostalgia and longing. So for ordinary people, as long as they don't use it for a long time, it won't have any impact. It's another way of saying, Nian has been lingering in Huang Quan's mind. That is, under certain circumstances, the thought after death will become more powerful. That is resentment. This was what Huang Quan had seen in the theatrical version of Hunter, but it was a long time ago and he had almost forgotten about it. Now the emerald green threaded font shows that he can absorb the thoughts on Lot's missing phone. Does this mean that in the future, he will have a natural advantage in eliminating thoughts? However, everything is unknown before testing. Only after testing will you know the results. Thinking about this, Huang Quan held the chanting tool and wanted to silently absorb it in his heart. Unexpectedly, when he had the idea of absorbing, an invisible suction suddenly appeared. In an instant, the black shimmer on the mobile phone was as if it was being peeled off, and all of it was integrated into Huang Quan's chi without any impact at all. A natural mind killer. Feeling that the chi volume in his body increased from the size of a table tennis ball to the size of an egg, a rare smile appeared on Huang Quan's calm face. Whether this is the result of the system, the golden finger, or the emerald green devil fruit, these are not within the scope of Huang Quan's thoughts and tangles. He only knew that perhaps there would be a way to become stronger that countless people could not reach in the future, before him. By absorbing various attached thoughts, the chi volume in the body is increased, thereby growing faster than other people. After all, in the world of Hunter, in addition to various weird and strange special abilities of Nen, the most important thing is the chi of the Nen itself. The number of these things attached to thoughts is still unclear. You still can't relax in your daily practice. Putting the cell phone that had been read aside, Huang Quan subconsciously looked at the emerald cracked text in his mind to see if there were any other changes. However, I suddenly discovered it. The green text that emerged actually no longer had the previous meaning, but had become a different data reality. Power system. Nian. Enhancer. Memory capacity bias 0.1%. Conjurer. Memory capacity bias 0.2%. Transmuter. Memory capacity bias 0.1%. Emitter. Memory capacity bias 0%. Manipulator. Memory capacity bias 0.5%. Trait system. Memory capacity bias 0.5%. Is this data based on my inner thoughts? Looking at the information displayed in his mind, Huang Quan fell into thinking. In Hunter x Hunter, a certain toilet war god once mentioned a conjecture in the sky arena. To put it simply, everyone's memory capacity is limited, which also represents the key to realizing one's own talent, which will mean Nen's development space in the future. Once you go the wrong way, it is a reverse operation such as Nen that is set opposite to itself. This will mean that a lot of space will be taken up for capacity development. The result is naturally the distinction between Nen, which will also be clearly reflected in personal strength. Nowadays, this emerald green spiral text. Huang Quan shook his head slightly. It sounds awkward to read, but since it is very similar to the lines of devil fruit and can absorb the attached grudge, let's call it devil lines. If the devil pattern displays these data through its own thoughts. Thinking about this, Huang Quan changed his mind and imagined the changes in the Chinese characters. He saw that the emerald green devil patterns were changing with his thoughts. When finally fixed, what emerged was Enhancer, thought capacity expansion by 1%. Conjurer, thought capacity expansion by 2%. Transmuter, thought capacity expansion by 1%. Emitter, thought capacity expansion by 1%. Manipulator, 5% capacity expansion. Trait system, thought capacity expansion by 5%. Compared with memory capacity, Huang Quan prefers memory capacity. After all, everyone's qualifications, personality, and environment are different, and their preference for the 6 elements is naturally also different. But judging from this data, the trait system with the same value as manipulator made Huang Quan a little surprised. Compared to other types, trait type has always been relatively rare. It's quite an unexpected surprise that he has this related talent. I just don't know if the black Nian absorbed just now has affected the growth of 6 elements. If you can, Huang Quan's pupils couldn't help but shrink when he imagined the possible full value situation in the future. This secret must never be known to anyone else. Need more telepathy items for testing. This is the thought that instantly appeared in Huang Quan's mind. If he could really achieve thinking capacity, that is to say, improve his talent, the use and development of his own Nen would be greatly increased. However, everything needs to be tested again. If it cannot be improved, it means that everything before is just a fantasy. But at least I know that my original attributes are more towards manipulator and trait system. Should we develop the future Nen now? After thinking about it, Huang Quan finally shook his head secretly. Currently, among the 4 basic applied skills, I have only barely mastered Tangle, and the other 3 applied skills are all in a proficient state. The most urgent task is to lay a solid foundation first. Thinking about this, Huang Quan picked up the screwdriver and prepared to disassemble the small electrical appliance in his hand. However, in the blink of an eye, the electrical appliance in his hand suddenly disappeared. When Huang Quan looked up, he was surprised to find that a large amount of electrical equipment on the ground had been dismantled into scrap metal parts and divided into 2 piles. The electrical appliances in his hand just now had been flexibly dismantled by Maki, throwing the useless ones to the left and the useful ones to the right. Well, seeing this, Huang Quan felt a little embarrassed and said, "Sorry, Are you okay?" After wiping his hands, Maki looked at Huang Quan with concern. "I just saw you dazed and shaking your head from time to time. Is the wound starting to hurt again?" After hesitating for a moment, Huang Quan looked at the other party's clear pupils, sighed and said, "No, the wound is not painful. I was thinking about something just now, so the disassembly was delayed. I'm very sorry." For him, this little thing is not enough to lie or deceive. Right is right, wrong is wrong, there is nothing to argue with. What's more, facing a little girl who is more than 10 years younger than her actual age. As long as it's okay. Maki breathed a sigh of relief and said, "After all, you have just recovered not long ago, so it is normal to be in such a daze. Let's go. This pile has been dismantled. You can go to Garbage Mountain to collect the second wave. I made an appointment with Shizuku and the others, and it's just right to go over now. Quan, do you want to go with me? Tomorrow?" After thinking for a moment, Huang Quan shook his head and said, I just suddenly thought of something. If possible, starting from tomorrow, I will go with you to collect supplies. Although I am curious about this period Shizuku et al. But after realizing that the outside world still wanted the murderer to hide in the dark, he urgently wanted to master a way to register. Even if it is Tang that you have barely mastered, further hone your practice. Well, are you sure you're okay? Maki stretched out his hand to help Huang Quan's forehead and said with concern. If you still feel uncomfortable, remember to tell me. You don't have to be too anxious when collecting supplies. What I collect every day is enough for us to eat. Then I'll leave first. If I'm late, I'll have to give some of the supplies to Shizuku and the others. Well, be careful on the road. Watching Maki close the door and leave, Huang Quan took a deep breath and turned back to the only bedroom in the room. After nearly 3 months of free food, he originally planned to go help today. But the sudden appearance of devil marks disrupted his plan. In addition, at this stage, the enemy is hidden and we're clear, so we must calculate all our current advantages. The guy who killed Ma Quan would definitely take action again if he knew he was not dead. After all, that guy didn't know whether he was exposed or not. You must be having trouble sleeping and eating now, right? Thinking of this, a vague black shadow flashed in Huang Quan's mind. This was the only scene Ma Quan had seen before he fainted before he was attacked. What I said to Ma Quan before would have no impact, and it was indeed the case. It is almost impossible to find a single black shadow in Meteor Street, which has a population of about 10 million. Unless there's that special tracking kind of Nen. Otherwise, the only thing we can do now is wait for the rabbit and lure the snake out of its hole. Then let's see who dies first. A cold glint flashed in Huang Quan's eyes, and he immediately stopped thinking and turned to study the emerald green devil patterns in his mind. The weird fonts formed by spirals are confusing to people. But the auxiliary functions are extremely powerful. Not only can it absorb the thoughts from the telepathy items to increase chi volume, but it also seems to have the effect of changing qualifications, talent, and capacity. It is not yet known whether it will have other functions. Just the discovery of these 2 auxiliary abilities can already make all Nin people greedy. Then, next, after hesitating for a moment, Huang Quan stood up and poured a glass of water, then picked up a slightly dry leaf from the garbage pile in the living room. Although, in the devil pattern display, he already understood his preference for 6 elements. But he still wanted to see how manipulator and trait system would perform under the Mizumi style commonly used in the hunter world. Could it be the same as one of his guesses at the moment? Snap. Put the old glass on the table and put the leaves you just picked up on top of the filled water. Subsequently, Huang Quan adjusted his exhalation, untied the tangle, and used an unskilled practice method to input chi, which is life energy, bit by bit towards both sides of the water glass. Even though he was very unskilled, he still looked presentable. There is not much difference from the time Huang Quan recalled when Wing taught Gon and others. Fortunately, all the theories in my mind can be put into practice. Thinking of this, Huang Quan couldn't help but lament that he digested and watched anime before time travel, and even watched those masterpieces many times. Otherwise, it would not be possible to theoretically study the methods of practicing mindfulness one by one in these 3 months. At this time, with Huang Quan's input through Lian and the influence of Qi, translucent white crystals of different shapes appeared in the water in the glass. The shape of each transparent white crystal is quite strange. Circle, rectangle, square, rhombus, triangle, trapezoid, rotation. It seems that the more crystals are derived, the more general categories of forms continue to grow. However, just when the crystal was about to break out of the water, it stopped suddenly. I saw that the leaves floating on the water surface had tiny holes appearing on the leaves, as if they were being eaten by inexplicable things. And in terms of shape, it is very similar to crystal. Seeing this situation, Huang Quan, who had already guessed it, couldn't help but shrink his pupils. Really, even the ability and characteristics of Nian are affected by that devil fruit. Judging from the results displayed in Water View type, it is obvious that although the biases are different, they should essentially belong to the same type of ability. The reason for being distinguished is probably because the rules of the hunter world are different, which leads to such a result. In other words, what I ate at that time was a real devil fruit. No wonder it tastes like shit. At that time, I thought it was a taste that was specially imitated by the merchant. Thinking of the strange taste he swallowed at that time, Huang Quan felt inexplicably nauseated. If it were really a devil fruit, what kind of ability would it be? Under the rules of this hunter world, what kind of changes will happen? What is restricted? For a time, more and more complicated thoughts appeared in my mind. Quite a while. When the thoughts subsided, Huang Quan's eyes revealed a calm look. Whether it is a devil fruit or not, and whether there will be any changes, we will know after testing. If you want to understand your own Nen, you must master the application skills of one of the 4 elements Fa. Although Huang Quan has just mastered Tangle, there is no problem if he wants to use Departure. Regardless of the power of his thought, at the moment, what he wanted to find out most was whether the characteristics and abilities of the devil fruit remained in his thought. Phew. While thinking, the white qi was condensed on Huang Quan's right hand bit by bit until it lasted for more than 10 seconds. The transparent white qi accumulated like a thin transparent white finger cot, clinging to the surface of the 5 fingers of his right hand. Is it because the qi volume is too low? Or is the qi control too low? Seeing this, Huang Quan frowned and immediately relaxed. If it's not big, then it's not big. As long as its characteristics and capabilities can be tested. If there are no characteristics, it means that the previous guesses were wrong. The relationship between the devil pattern and the emerald green devil fruit was completely different from what he had expected. After all, his level of understanding of Nen is based on the plot scenes in the anime Hunter x Hunter. In the real world, this obviously belongs to the level of knowing what is happening but not knowing why. I want to directly distinguish the difference between Nian and Qi. There is nothing else to do but practice tests. At this moment, perhaps it was because he wanted to know what kind of Nen and characteristics he had. This longing thought seemed to affect his Nian, causing the mental energy condensed in his 5 fingers to spread suddenly. Call out. It's like a piercing spear. Before Huang Quan could react, the white index finger cuff had already touched the cement wall on his right side. Next moment, as the transparent white finger cots disappeared into the cement wall. On the cement wall, a rectangular cement door, 50 centimeters long and 30 centimeters wide was quietly formed. Seeing this, Huang Quan walked up to the cement door in surprise, and then gently pulled and pushed the door. The next second, the concrete door slowly opened outwards with Huang Quan's push. This is the characteristic of the door fruit among devil fruits. Looking at the old electrical appliances outside the door and the gray sky, Huang Quan couldn't help but be stunned. When he closed the concrete door, he saw it disappear instantly. Finally confirmed my suspicion. I didn't expect it to be the characteristic of Menmin fruit. As a pirate fan, Huang Quan naturally remembers the door fruit. That was during the Battle of Justice Island. Obtained by Bruno, and can freely enter and exit anywhere. Open the door. Places where the door opens include in the air, on flames, on the human body, etc. No matter how hard the place is or how shapeless it is, a door can be created. Moreover, it can create doors of different types, sizes, and shapes according to the user's consciousness, and even the ability user himself can become a door. This is surprising. Realizing that his mind has the characteristics of the door fruit, Huang Quan couldn't help but smile a little bitterly. It can be said that this disrupted all his previous development of Nen. Originally, he wanted to set up 100 Shiki Guanyin like Netero, or have the ability to plunder and copy like Crollo. Unexpectedly, had the future characteristics been determined from the very beginning. No wonder manipulator and trait system have a far higher percentage than other systems. Although the characteristics and abilities contained in Nen are basically affected by the Nen's personal will and needs. For example, the characteristics of Huang Quan's Nian at this moment are obviously affected by the potential demand, that is, the influence of the gate fruit, which is why this situation is caused. If you want to change it, you can only have personal will, that is, explicit needs and clear will demands. As long as Huang Quan can realize this and spend a lot of time, he may change the opening the door characteristic of Nian. He just knew what was happening but didn't know why. It was not easy for him to realize this without systematic training. At least in this regard, Huang Quan has reluctantly accepted the reality. If it is really like a devil fruit, developed with the help of imagination, with the characteristics of the gate fruit, it may be called a god-level ability. But the hunter world starts here. After thinking for a while, Huang Quan dispersed the qi in his hand, placed his right index finger against the cement wall, and said calmly, "Open." However, the cement walls remained motionless. Seeing this, Huang Quan looked thoughtful and made different attempts in other positions. It's just that no matter whether he speaks aloud, silently, draws pictures, or other methods, he can't form a situation like cement door. Only when qi is condensed, the characteristic effect of thought will be activated. Just like this moment, Huang Quan came to the cement wall again, stretched out his right hand covered with qi and touched it gently. Click. The 50-centimeter long and wide circular concrete door appeared directly in front of him, and slowly opened with the push. In Hunter's world, reading is the most basic rule of ability. Deeply aware of this, Huang Quan closed that cement door to make it disappear. Then he hesitated and reached out to touch the air. Since the door fruit can open doors in the air, can he also do it at this moment? After a while, Huang Quan gasped, holding his trembling knees with both hands, looking at the air gate that appeared in the air the size of a fingernail. It turns out that he can indeed open doors in the air. But whether it was the difficulty, speed, or qi consumed, it was far beyond his imagination. In less than a few seconds, the qi was almost consumed. For now, it's totally worth the loss. At this stage, the main purpose is to increase qi and practice and control the application of qi. Otherwise, at our current half-baked level, even if we have abilities and characteristics in advance, we will only serve as cannon fodder for the nin. Think of this. Huang Quan slowly closed his eyes, dispelled the distracting thoughts in his mind, and concentrated on tightening and isolating the qi throughout his body, making his sense of existence disappear little by little. This is the ultimate in application skills. When used, it can accelerate the recovery of physical strength and qi. This is what Huang Quan has been trying to figure out over the past 3 months. Because he has not received formal systematic training, he does not know whether the application techniques he has developed are correct. But in terms of effects, various application techniques do have different effects. It's just like Tang, which he majored in during this period. As long as you practice day and night, you can not only strengthen your defense like transparent armor, but also strengthen your physique bit by bit over time, and even the passage of time will slow down a lot, thereby extending lifespan and maintaining youthfulness. Knowledge Mingju, Jinglian, Jufa. This is the most important basic application skill for beginners. Only by mastering them skillfully can one's own ability be further improved. It's like the vague concept of evaluation of Nen in the hunter world. Huang Quan doesn't know what other people think. Just his own integrated thoughts during this period. The control levels of Nen have been slightly divided. Just like perceiving qi, manipulating qi, skilled qi, controlling qi, micro-controlling qi, supernatural ability, etc. Among them, perceiving qi means having a clear understanding of qi and being able to feel the loss of qi. Control qi is to limit and control the passing qi, so that qi circulates throughout the body, which is equivalent to crossing the entry level of Nian. And proficiency qi is equivalent to the threshold of a master. Only those who can skillfully control the flow of qi and use various Nian application techniques can be called Nen. As for the higher levels above, for example, controlling qi is equivalent to mastering various advanced application skills. The fluency in the use of qi and the ease of offensive and defensive combat can be called a master among Nin people. As for micro-control of qi, perhaps only a few people at Netero and other levels can achieve it. After all, for most Nin people, basically they are all in the proficiency qi stage. Even so, there is a clear gap between the masters at this stage, and there are high and low levels. Just the facts. There is no clear hierarchy among the good. Nor can we judge the outcome of the battle based on the levels of division. After all, apart from the control, quantity and quality of qi, the most important thing is the strange abilities and characteristics. And, to a certain extent, the environment, terrain, and even the surrounding people and things will affect the outcome of the battle. And that's the beauty of Nen. At this moment, Huang Quan is equivalent to having just entered that skilled qi level. Except for Tang, which is slightly better. The other three application techniques are all between skilled Qi and manipulated Qi. Really speaking, it is only slightly better than the talented person who just started. Regarding his qualification, Huangquan had already tested it roughly. But now that he has the devil pattern, he has no way of knowing what changes will occur in the future. The only thing that can be known is that maybe we can continue to grow through this. Subsequently, along with the silent atmosphere, time passed quietly. After recovering Qi from Zhu, Huangquan began to practice basic application skills again, as well as various experiments with the characteristics of gate shown in Nian. It wasn't until Maki came back dragging old and damaged things that he stopped temporarily and took the initiative to help him organize and disassemble various electrical equipment. However, this time, I was not so lucky to encounter the telepathy item again. In this regard, Huangquan is not far behind. Items with Nian attached to them are not reflected much in the hunter world. It is definitely impossible to see it everywhere. However, this also made Huangquan decide to go to the garbage mountain with Maki tomorrow. Perhaps, on that mountain of rubbish sloping from all over the world, there will be certain spiritual objects appearing. Evening. After a simple dinner, I saw Maki playing with thin threads for a while, and then fell asleep slightly tired. In the narrow bedroom, Huangquan was lying on another smaller bed, closing his eyes and silently practicing Kang and Zhu. As for practice and FA, because there is a little more movement during practice. In order not to disturb Maki's rest, he usually practices one by one when no one is at home. This cycle repeats over and over again. He didn't stop practicing until he was mentally exhausted from practicing, and went to sleep with some worries. 3 months have passed. Always face reality. Hope it's not such a bad world. Meteor Street. The area is called a garbage dump by the outside world. As early as 1,500 years ago, this place was defined as the garbage dump of the world. In the official definition of the world, this kind of place is a no man's land. Therefore, no matter which country you are from, you can discard any garbage here. And in this place, it is also allowed to discard anything here. Garbage, weapons, corpses, babies, anything this world throws away, the residents here will also accept it all. This is indeed the case. After more than 1,000 years of development, although the area outside Meteor Street has been filled with mountains of garbage, the residential area is surprisingly clean and tidy. Many buildings are basically in black and white, with some small parts being monotonous cement gray. If you ignore the garbage area outside the street and the complex odor that cannot be concealed, anyone who comes here will think that this is a fairly ordinary town. However, the residents living in Meteor Street are all abandoned due to various reasons. To the outside world and countries, they are all black accounts from which no information can be found. As for the living habits of human beings who rely on mountains and rivers to eat and drink, Meteor Street, which is backed by countless garbage, naturally relies on recycling usable garbage resources from garbage to survive. Just like Maki and others, they find recyclable materials every day in the garbage that is full of various harmful substances to the human body. After all, self-reliance is the most basic rule of Meteor Street. Especially when there is no family, even a newborn baby must survive on its own once it reaches a certain age. There is no pity, no sympathy here. There are just pairs of hungry and greedy eyes. Once someone falls, they will be immediately devoured by some wolves. Early morning. After a simple wash, Huangquan followed Maki with a calm face and walked toward the garbage mountain outside the street. Go out. The broad and straight avenue caught Huangquan's eyes. Huangquan, who was following Maki, walked along the street to the left, observing the surrounding buildings and people. It is known from Ma Quan's memory fragments. At this time, the population of Meteor Street was close to 10 million. If someone could look down from a high altitude, they would notice it. The overall structure of Meteor Street is shaped like a field. 6 broad and straight streets connect each other vertically and horizontally, dividing Meteor Street into 4 major districts: East District, South District, West District, and North District. Between the major areas, countless paths are interspersed with various street buildings. In Meteor Street, different from outside government systems, the only managers are the 4 beasts who stand out from the 4 districts. The so-called four beasts are just code names. Represents the four largest forces in Meteor Street. There are four top managers in the council management formed by the four beasts. The four beasts can also be said to be the names of the four of them. In addition to the jurisdiction of the territory, it is also divided according to regions. Although there are occasional conflicts, they are still within reasonable control. The area where Huang Quan and Maki live is the street area on the east corner, very close to the east exit of Meteor Street. Not long after, they arrived at the exit of Meteor Street. I saw that without the protection of the city wall, garbage mountains exuding an unconcealable smell were standing quietly outside the street. Large garbage trucks are dumping garbage in the distance from time to time. From the inside and outside of Meteor Street, you can't see the end of the garbage mountain at all. At this time, it's not just Huang Quan who is observing his surroundings. Meteor Street residents who saw Huang Quan around them all looked at him with contempt, mixed with envy and curiosity. See this. Huang Quan did not have any doubts. From Ma Quan's memory, he had anticipated this situation. After all, it took 3 months to recuperate, which is basically impossible in Meteor Street, which is based on self-reliance. In this environment of survival of the fittest, even children as young as 3 or 4 will find ways to avoid starvation through their own efforts. Not to mention Huang Quan, who has been sidelined for March due to injury. If it weren't for Maki's care, he would have either starved to death or adapted to the living atmosphere of Meteor Street in advance. Ignore them. Keenly aware of this situation, Maki slowed down his movement and walked to the right side of Huang Quan, blocking those disgusting gazes. I see. Huang Quan nodded and said nothing else. You have already traveled across the world. If you still care so much about other people's eyes, should you continue to live? In this Meteor Street of survival of the fittest, strength alone can tell everything. If you want to convince others by talking, it is more realistic to lie down in the coffin earlier and find a way to travel to the world of Naruto. Secretly looking at Huang Quan's calm expression, a trace of relief flashed in Maki's eyes. Maybe life and death can really change a person. No matter what, it is always a good thing to change the silent and introverted personality of the past. That's all. As Huang Quan and Maki disappeared into the garbage mountain, some people who were looking forward to something interesting happening scattered around in a slightly bored manner. I thought that guy Quan would run away as embarrassed as before. I would rather this guy rush up and beat us. I haven't beaten anyone in a long time. That guy is so cowardly. You better stop dreaming, Maki will kill you. TCH. If Maki were here, this guy would have died long ago. Accompanied by whispers, the crowd on the street gradually dispersed. After all, life goes on, and if you don't collect some good things today, your stomach will suffer in the future. However, at this moment, there was a figure who looked wretched, looking at Huang Quan's disappearing back with a frightened and solemn expression. He immediately turned around and ran hurriedly towards the alley behind him. Shouldn't that guy be dead? Why is he still alive? Then what happened before? Is it already known to Maki and his gang? Apart from the remaining sound in the air, there was a hint of panic. Outside the street, Huang Quan, who was walking side by side with Maki, paused slightly and glanced in the direction of the street. What's wrong? Seeing this, Maki looked over suspiciously. Fine. Perhaps because he had crossed the threshold of Nien, Huang Quan felt that his 5 senses had become much sharper than before. Although it was not extraordinary, he could still vaguely feel that there was a gaze always watching him as he walked around the street. It's like being bitten by a mosquito, like an illusion but still faintly noticeable. Who is spying on me? A flash of thought flashed in Huang Quan's eyes. In Ma Quan's memory, because of his reticence, he basically didn't get along with many people. And judging from the memory fragments absorbed, he didn't make any enemies. Then after speculation and analysis, there is only one result left. Is that the person who attacked Ma Quan 3 months ago? Thinking about this, Huang Quan raised his eyebrows, but his expression remained calm. That's fine, no matter who is behind it. As long as they dare to show their flaws, they will all be cut off. Certainly, strategically, you can despise the enemy, but tactically, you must pay attention to your opponent. Huang Quan still understands such a simple truth. However, Ma Quan was just an ordinary person before his death. And the person who took action still started with a sneak attack. Logically speaking, the other party should be a member of ordinary people. Even if he has force, he must be at the level of a gangster. But you have to be cautious. Huang Quan's expression was calm, but his heart was always cautious. For him, no matter what he does, good or bad, the first thing to anticipate is the worst outcome. Even in this world there is no exception. Only hope for the worst outcome in everything. In this way, you will be mentally prepared for anything you encounter. Instead of relying on luck and despairing physically and mentally when encountering injustice. It must be assumed in advance that the enemy will be a nin who is above me. Huang Quan slowed down his pace and walked behind Maki, while his mind kept thinking and simulating the various consequences that would occur when encountering an enemy. Now the enemy is in the dark and he is in the light. He had no idea when the other party would take action again. And the collection of intelligence can also be called nil at this stage. So the only advantage is naturally that the enemy does not know that he has cultivated Nian. This is also the only advantage point that Huang Quan has between the two sides. As for Maki, thinking of this, Huang Quan looked up at Maki's thin back and shook his head slightly. He couldn't involve the other party. He could feel that Maki was still within the scope of ordinary people at this moment. Even if he knew some martial arts, he should be extremely limited at this age. Besides, her brother is already dead, and dragging her into danger. This is not Huang Quan's style. He has already cultivated Nian and become a nemesis. If he is still hiding behind a child, for him, even the word shame cannot be described. Of course you have to take revenge by yourself, so that you will have the most perfect ending. Whether it's life or death. Huang Quan, who is also thin, has slightly raised corners of his mouth and an unusual calmness in his eyes. I hope the enemy he encounters for the first time will not disappoint him too much. Coming, Maki, who was walking in front, hesitated slightly and said, Quan, can you promise me something? After coming back to his senses, Huang Quan looked at the other party in confusion. What, if I can do it? Don't fight with that guy Uvijin. Maki's cold little face looked at Huang Quan's wounds and said slightly worriedly. Every time you two meet, you can't help but quarrel and fight. Now your wounds have just healed, so don't. I promise you. Before the other party could finish speaking, Huang Quan covered his face and nodded simply in response. In the memory of this little guy, Ma Quan, the scene that appears most often is the fight with Uvijin. The main reason is naturally because every time Uvijin sees Ma Quan, he laughs at him for being like a sissy and having a weak personality. In addition, although Uvijin is only a teenager, he has the size and strength of an adult. Every time Ma Quan fought hard, the result was a bruised nose and a swollen face. However, what that guy said was right. Touching his little face, Huang Quan had a strange look in his eyes. In fact, at this age, Ma Quan's appearance is completely on the feminine side, but she is somewhat similar to Kurapika. When he looked in the mirror for the first time, if he hadn't been in Meteor Street, he almost thought he had traveled through time and become Kurapika. Fortunately, I am only 10 years old now, so long as I get moderate exercise. You should be able to lean towards the masculine type in the future, right? Just promise. Maki couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing this, and was about to say something. Maki, this way, not far away, among the four people waiting, Uvijin, the tallest, waved and shouted in the direction of Maki and Maki. Especially when he saw Huang Quan, he looked surprised and said, Little sissy, why are you here? Have you recovered from your injuries? As soon as these words came out, Nobunaga, Shalnark and the 6-year-old Shizuku next to them all put their hands on their foreheads, looking extremely speechless. Not far away. Upon hearing Uvijin's shouting, veins popped up on Maki's forehead. He pulled out a slender silk thread from his sleeve and gritted his teeth and said, Uvijin, you idiot, if you don't shut your mouth, let me sew it up. Well, what's wrong? When Uvijin heard that he ignored the obstruction of the 3 people next to him, he said with confusion and dissatisfaction, I said this boy is a sissy before, but you didn't react so much. Why can't you shout now? This kid Ma Quan already looks so girly. Brush. Shalnark, who couldn't stand it, covered Uvijin's mouth speechlessly, ignoring the other person's whimpers, turned to look at Huang Quan's figure, and said with a smile. Long time no see, Quan. It's really great to see you again. Yes. At this time, Nobunaga, who still looked pretty, patted Uvijin, who had calmed down with the wooden sword in his hand, sighed and said, "You also know this guy's character. He has always been straightforward and carefree. Don't mind it too much. Isn't this possible?" Looking at the current 4 pictures, which were far different from those in the original work, Huang Quan couldn't help but lament that time is really a butcher's knife. Besides, it's just a title. It doesn't matter to me now. Huh. After hearing what Quan said at this moment, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Especially Shizuku, who looked the shortest, looked at Huang Quan with his mouth wide open. Quan. Has your brain been burned out by this illness? How do you talk? Maki patted Shizuku's little head and looked at everyone. Perhaps it is the loss and recovery of memory that has caused some changes in Quan's personality. Don't worry about this for now. Have you confirmed the collection point for today's supplies? Already confirmed. Shalnark released his hands covering Uvijin's mouth, took out a dilapidated and old mobile phone from his pocket, and clicked out the information recorded on it. According to reliable information, there will be new, garbage, landfills in districts 4, 7, 8, 10, and 13 today, and our target is the districts 4, 7, and 8 closest to us. Quote. What do you think? Maki looked at Uvijin and the others and asked, do you want to try your luck in other districts? It doesn't matter. It's all about picking up trash anyway, it's the same everywhere. I don't object, it's better to be closer. Nobunaga and others gave their own answers. Only Uvijin approached Huang Quan with a dissatisfied look on his face, touched his shoulder and said, Sissy, Quan, aren't you going to fight back against me today? You won't really burn your brain, will you? You used to be a trash, but you were very brave, but now you have become a coward. Huang Quan, who was listening to Maki and others discussing the allocation, saw the chattering coming from the side. He couldn't help but rolled his eyes, turned to look at Uvijin, and said calmly, Tell me, what do you want? Finally a reaction. Uvijin's bell-like eyes suddenly lit up, and a sinister smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Old rules. Get beaten by me, fight with me. Do you want to get beaten up by you? Huang Quan rolled his eyes. This simple-minded reckless man has always been stubborn in Ma Quan's impression. It seems that if we don't deal with him today, he will obviously be entangled later. I promised Maki that I won't fight with you today. Huang Quan said calmly, if your goal is to defeat me, then follow the old rules. The so-called old rules are naturally rules in a certain sense set by this group. Without fighting, victory or defeat is decided by arm wrestling. Huh, you mean arm wrestling? The dark-skinned Uvijin, with his afro haircut, looked down at Huang Quan due to his height advantage, and the finger bones of his thick hands clicked. With your small body, are you sure you're not kidding me? When we got along before, this little sissy was always willing to fight and would never get involved in a power-based game like arm wrestling. Have you really changed your temper? Quote. Facing Uvijin's gaze, Huang Quan's expression remained calm and indifferent. To compare or not to compare. For him, after absorbing Ma Quan's memory, he is Ma Quan himself, and it doesn't matter whether he hides it or not. As long as you use the excuse of experiencing amnesia and life and death crisis, all unreasonable things will become reasonable. What other people think is up to other people. The most important thing at the moment is to improve his life with Maki, and to find more telepathy items to strengthen his body. Of course, the reason why arm wrestling was proposed. On the one hand, he promised Maki not to fight Uvijin. On the other hand, he already knew at this moment that Uvijin and others, like Maki, had not yet entered the threshold of Nien. Otherwise, there's no way these guys wouldn't be able to discover the tangle that is always maintained around him. Compared, of course it's better than. Uvijin opened his mouth to reveal his white teeth, rolled up his sleeves, and his thick arm muscles were full of desire. He looked at Huang Quan for a while as if he was staring at prey. Seeing that Huang Quan's eyes were still calm, Uvijin smiled slightly and said, Come with me, let me see where your confidence comes from. Seeing this, Huang Quan followed him calmly. Regardless of winning or losing, this competition will definitely break the fixed impression in other people's eyes. But he did it on purpose. Just because he is not only the dead Ma Quan, but also the reborn Huang Quan. If the basic principle of life is to imitate others, then he is willing to die himself. Hey, Kwon is really different today. Shalnark, who was listening attentively, saw this and couldn't help but whistled and followed. Interesting. Holding the wooden knife, Nobunaga looked at the backs of Huang Quan and Huang Quan with interest. I've never seen Quan participate in arm wrestling. How is his strength? I don't know. Maki glared at Nobunaga and followed him slightly worriedly. She had heard the conversation between the two people just now. I originally thought that Izumi would temporarily avoid Uvijin's provocation, but I didn't expect that Izumi would suddenly propose arm wrestling. This is a game where you try your best and you may get injured at any time. Isn't Quan always not involved? Why did you take the initiative to bring it up this time? With doubts and a little worry, Maki knew that he couldn't stop the two of them, so he could only sigh and follow them. Suck it. Shizuku, who was eating brown sugar, looked at the backs of several people blankly, wondering where they wanted to go. Didn't he say he was going to pick up trash in the 4th district? Why are you heading towards District 7? However, Shizuku, who is naturally forgetful, quickly put these questions aside and followed him while eating brown sugar. Anyway, as long as she has something to eat, it doesn't matter where she goes. Now, Huang Quan, who was in the front, followed Uvijin for a distance of about 300 to 400 meters, and finally found a suitable square rock in the rock area next to the garbage mountain in District 7. This is also where Uvijin, Nobunaga and others have been engaging in arm wrestling. On the periphery of Meteor Street, apart from the mountains filled with garbage, the most common area is this kind of open rocky area. Relatively speaking, there are very few green plants, and they are basically made of sand and gravel. Kaka, Uvijin stood on the left side of the rock, cracking his finger bones, staring at the calm Huang Quan opposite, grinning and showing his white teeth. Simple arm wrestling is too boring, do you want to add some excitement? Oh, brushing over the sunken marks on the rock, Huang Quan raised his head and said calmly. What kind of bonus do you want to add? How about half the supplies for 3 days? Slightly squatting and leaning down, supporting the elbow of his right arm on the rock, Uvijin showed a provocative look, obviously ready to exert force. Just what I wanted, but... Huang Quan nodded and placed his right hand on the rock. Compared with the opponent's thick arm, it looked extremely thin. I also have a request. What? If I win, I don't want to hear the name Sissy in your mouth. Bang. If you could do it. Uvijin held Huang Quan's right hand fiercely, with a hint of ferocity in his bell-like eyes. Then let's try it. Chapter 11. For Uvijin, strengthening his body and fighting have always been what he is most interested in. Especially when it comes to exercising his body, Uvijin can be called a workout maniac and will fall into exercise whenever he has time. Therefore, whether it is physical fitness or strength, he is far beyond his peers. The same person as Nobunaga, but Nobunaga practices swordsmanship. At this moment, compared to Uvijin, who had never lost in arm wrestling, Maki and others were more worried about whether Izumi's thin arms could withstand the opponent's strong strength. Let me be the referee. Seeing the two of them shaking hands, Shalnark stepped forward with a smile and stabilized the center of gravity between their hands. Although in his mind, he had already concluded that Yiquan's strength and figure would lead to a loss, but this did not dampen his interest in having fun. The rules are very simple. After I count the 3rd time, it starts immediately. Do you understand? Stop talking nonsense, Shalnark, Uvijin said impatiently. Just shout, start. With the power of this little trash, it doesn't even take a second. Ah, what a boring character. Shalnark shrugged upon hearing this and turned to look at Quan. What do you think, Quan? If you don't agree, just do as he says. Huang Quan nodded slightly, still looking at Uvijin with his deep eyes. As for arm wrestling, he had played it with his friends more than 10 times before traveling through time. Of course, in terms of results, there are winners and losers. Obviously, technique plays a minimal role in arm wrestling, and the most important thing is strength. From the thickness of Uvijin's arms and the circumference of his muscles, Huang Quan knew very well that the opponent's strength was far greater than his own. There is only one way to win. Prepare. Seeing that the two people's bodies were tense and the veins in his right hand were faintly bulging, Shalnark decisively released his hands and shouted at the same time. Start. Boom. Many veins popped out, and a sense of violent power emerged spontaneously. For Uvijin, who has always gone all out, the moment he started falling, he had already unleashed his full strength. The lion still needs all his strength to fight the rabbit. Let him end the battle cleanly. However, the next moment, what shocked Uvijin and everyone watching was the skinny arm on the opposite side didn't even move at all under such a powerful force. How can it be? Seeing this situation, Shalnark and others couldn't help but stare in shock. The other side, Huang Quan, who wrapped his chi around his right arm, had a hint of surprise in his eyes. Despite his mental preparation, Uvijin's power still exceeded his expectations. That kind of powerful force, like a volcanic eruption, if he hadn't been the first to condense and cover the chi, it would have collapsed at this moment. Oh, this guy hides so deeply. Seeing that he could not kill the opponent instantly, Uvijin put away his shock, and a trace of fighting spirit and interest appeared in his pupils. Interesting, really interesting. He had been bored for a long time after being ranked first for so long. I didn't expect that this time, there would be such an unexpected harvest. Thinking of this, Uvijin's arm muscles swelled a bit again, and the powerful force squeezed towards Huang Quan like a jack. Can it also increase strength? He is truly worthy of being a monster in the future enhancer. Feeling that the consumption of chi began to accelerate, Huang Quan looked calm, still maintaining the coverage of Tang and maintaining the strength of his right arm. The idea that he could easily defeat Uvijin under the influence of chi has been thrown out of Huang Quan's mind. Really, only after practice will you know that some people's talents are really beyond ordinary people's imagination. For example, Uvijin's power at this moment. It was far beyond his imagination. Wow, it's been 7 seconds. Shizuku cheered. Izumi, come on, defeat the big devil Uvijin. Is Quan's power that strong? Seeing the stalemate between the two, Nobunaga said in disbelief. 9 seconds have passed now, and the record of the match between me and Uvijin is only 15 seconds. Maki, what's going on with this guy? Quote. Facing this scene at this moment, Maki was also in a state of surprise. She also didn't expect that Quan, who was always as thin as herself, would be so gifted in strength. After all, she had competed with Uvijin from time to time, and the time could only last about 12 seconds. But now Quan has surpassed her record. No, it should have surpassed the record of everyone present. It has reached 16 seconds. Could it be? Is Quan really hopeful of winning? Everyone who realized this couldn't help but look at each other, and the surprise in their eyes could not be suppressed. Beside the rocks, boom boom, the power is still leaning between the hands. But compared to Huang Quan's understatement, the veins on Uvijin's forehead also appeared quickly. Even with his endurance, he couldn't sustain the tilt with all his strength for several minutes. Now, there was a hint of fanaticism in Huang Quan's eyes that he was looking at. He deeply believed that the other party would be the first to be unable to hold on before his strength faded. However, what Uvijin didn't know was, Huang Quan on the opposite side also had the same idea at this time. As long as Uvijin's power is exhausted, it will decline before its own chi is exhausted. As long as the other party shows a slight flaw, this competition will end in an instant. Although he can also extend his chi to the 5 fingers of his right hand and crush the opponent with chi. But the result of this is likely to cause the chi to invade Uvijin's body, causing the opponent's whole body aura nodes to open. For ordinary people who come into contact with Nian for the first time, there are only 2 outcomes. Either you can awaken thoughts through this, or all life energy will disappear and die. To this, related simulation scenarios have already flashed in Huang Quan's mind. When you are temporarily unwilling to expose thoughts and inspire the other party's thoughts. This was the reason why he only used chi to cover his right forearm and upper arm without extending it to his wrist. Therefore, when using Tangle to fix the arm, Huang Quan makes more use of his skill in arm wrestling, that is, he is ready to go. If Uvijin is good at pure power crushing, then what Huang Quan is doing now is just waiting for work and gathering momentum. As long as chi is not exhausted, the balance of victory and defeat will not collapse. 30 seconds have passed. Glancing at the time on his phone, Shalnark looked at Huang Quan in surprise and turned a little solemn. I really didn't expect that Quan could persist for so long. Is this guy Uvijin letting off steam? Are you blind? Looking at Uvijin's bulging veins and muscles, and his slight tilt towards the spring, Nobunaga looked slightly surprised and said, "It's obvious that Uvijin has used all his strength. But the winner should be decided soon. After all, Uvijin's physique is mainly based on endurance and strength. If he doesn't exceed his powerful explosive power, he will definitely be dragged down by him." "I don't think so." Looking at the cell phone in his hand with the seconds passing by, Shalnark narrowed his eyes and said softly, "In my calculations, victory or defeat has just begun, 45 seconds. Is there no limit to this guy's endurance?" Huang Quan, who had been counting silently in his mind for a minute, slowly frowned on his calm face. This big guy's endurance is as terrifying as his strength. The sense of strength that had not declined at all really surprised him. They have already used Tangle and are still at a slight disadvantage. Although there was no direct collision using Nian, the result still made him feel a little surprised. Moreover, depending on the opponent's posture, it can be maintained for a while. And my own Chi. 15 seconds. No, it can't last more than 10 seconds. Thinking of this, Huang Quan's pupils shrank sharply. The opponent has such strong endurance and strength even though he cannot read. Is this the advantage of being a natural enhancer? No, you absolutely cannot lose the game like this. If I, who possess Nen, still lose to Uvijin, who is an ordinary person, then this shame will accompany me throughout my Nen career. Break out. He must unleash a power far beyond that of Uvijin and decide the outcome in an instant. In an instant, Huang Quan's thoughts were spinning at high speed in his mind. Various thoughts, either simple or complex, flickered and emerged. Finally settled on practice. Wanting to instantly explode with power far beyond Uvijin. Without having to collide with the opponent with chi, the only way is to release the chi in the body from the aura nodes together, thereby releasing more chi than usual. Then push the right arm to form an instant explosive power. Plan locked. Huang Quan's pupils narrowed slightly. Concentrate on the aura nodes all over the body, use practice as an applied skill, and expand the aura nodes to the limit at this moment, causing the chi volume in the body to explode into a state far beyond normal. For a time, Huang Quan's entire body was covered with invisible chi by the aura nodes connecting not only his right arm but his whole body, increasing the strength of his body. At the same time, the aura erupted from a large amount of chi is pushed towards the outside of the body like an invisible jet. Under Huang Quan's conscious guidance, the jet volume of the aura nodes on his right arm was the largest. In an instant, Huang Quan, who was originally at a slight disadvantage, exploded with powerful power that was several times greater than his own. This power was also beyond Uvijin's imagination. In less than 0.1 seconds, he had no time to react, and this other kind of battle ended instantly. Boom! With the sound of the collision between the back of the hand and the rock face, the image of victory and defeat appeared in everyone's eyes. For a moment, not only Uvijin, but also Maki, Nobunaga, Shalnark and Shizuku who were watching could not help but look shocked and stunned. There was silence all around. How can it be? Shalnark stared blankly at the almost unbelievable scene in front of him, not even reacting when his beloved mobile phone fell to the ground. This is too miraculous. It is clear that Uvijin is beginning to gain the upper hand, and the balance of victory and defeat is about to tip. In the end, the winner was decided in less than 0.1 seconds. So what does the stalemate in the previous minute mean? Could it be that Izumi was teasing Uvijin? Or is it to give the other party face and prevent him from losing too miserably? At this moment, the same question also appeared in the minds of Maki and others. Obviously, Uvijin, who has always been undefeated in arm wrestling, lost to Izumi, who was much smaller than him. It was such an incredible thing. Phew! Seeing Uvijin stunned on the spot, Huang Quan took back his right hand that was slightly purple from being pinched, and along the way, he contracted aura nodes and chi into absolute state. To prevent chi from being consumed more and causing physical and mental fatigue. After all, today's work has just begun, so it's better to recover the consumed chi as much as possible. Remember to abide by the agreement. Seeing Uvijin's absent-minded expression, Huang Quan slowly stood up and rubbed the 5 fingers of his right hand, which were slightly purple. This was the area that was not covered by chi just now, and it was still aching slightly. On the contrary, after the competition with Uvajin, he had some vague understanding. Perhaps when he came to this new world, he should abandon the so-called caution. Not to mention that this belongs to the world of Hunter. He is currently in Meteor Street, where the world-famous thieves group Phantom Troop formed a group. All normal worldviews are different here. The weak and the strong, the fittest and the fittest are the most basic principles here. Only strong strength can ignore all worries. Caution is often synonymous with weakness. Like the competition with Uvajin. Although using chi to strengthen one's own strength is suspected of cheating. But Uvajin's age, size, strength and other physical qualities are far superior to that of his teenage self at the moment. To some extent, this is a fairer contest. Even if there is a difference, if you lose, you lose. A win is a win. There is no absolute fairness in the world. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. No matter who loses between the two. According to the rules of Meteor Street, no, it should be said that according to the conclusion between the strong, winning or losing ends at this moment. How on earth did he do it? Uvajin, who still maintained his loser attitude, had the same question flashing through his simple and rough mind at this moment. Why did the other party's power suddenly explode to a level far exceeding his own? Along with all kinds of doubts, Uvajin, who never liked to think, slowly entered a state of contemplation. Not only him, but Nobunaga and the others were also thinking about similar issues. Need to further improve reading. Huang Quan rubbed his wrists and glanced quickly at everyone with his deep eyes. The final result is that although he wins, judging from the opponent's physical strength and power, once he steps into the threshold of thought. With the simple-minded characteristics of Enhancer, he will definitely catch up with him in a short time. And Nobunaga, Maki, Shalnark, Shizuku. In the near future, all kinds of strange nen will be displayed, showing the huge potential of these people. If you want not to be surpassed by these people, you must work twice as hard. After all, in addition to Tangle, Ju, Lien, and Fa, there are more advanced application skills. Plus the development of nen, time, memoir items, development time, and enough mental tools to absorb devil pattern. This is what Huang Quan needs most right now. Thinking of this, Huang Quan stopped wasting time and looked at the people who were still in a daze, with a calm expression. It's almost time to collect supplies for today, right? Listen to this. Everyone recovered from their surprise. I lost. With some dissatisfaction, Uvajin stood up silently, his nearly 1.9 meter 9 figure showing a hint of silence. He immediately looked at Huang Quan and said in a deep voice. I am willing to admit defeat. Starting today, half of the supplies searched for in the next 3 days will be yours. And I will never mention those 2 words again. In terms of results, losing is losing. He is not a sore loser. Although Uvajin was very reluctant, he was indeed defeated by his opponent in the head-to-head confrontation, and there is nothing to quibble about. It's just that it's an experience that I've never lost before. However, his fighting spirit did not diminish, but only increased. There was silence for a while. Competition again in 3 days. Staring at Huang Quan, Uvajin's bell-like pupils were filled with a fiery color. I want to see your weird explosive power again. Good. With a simple response, Huang Quan agreed without saying anything more. After all, there is such a talented guy who challenges himself all the time, and he must be able to dispel all his laziness. When he thought about how powerful Uvajin and others would be in the future after they learned Nyen, he felt a sense of urgency to become stronger. Now that it's over, Maki next to him raised his hand and pointed at the garbage mountain in District 7 and District 8 in the distance, and said coldly. The previous plan also needs to be slightly changed. Districts 7 and 8 are closest to us. Without wasting time, being nearby is the best choice. After collecting these 2 mountains of garbage, we can stop by District 4 on the way back. Does anyone have any other suggestions? No, very reasonable. Let's get started. I choose District 8. Then I'll go to District 7. I'm so hungry. It's better to start early and finish early. Quote. Accompanied by the sound of conversation gradually fading away. The 6 people were divided into 2 groups. Uvajin, Nobunaga and Shalnark chose District 7. Huang Quan followed Maki and Shizuku towards the garbage mountain in District 8. For the people of Meteor Street, collecting supplies every day has always been a matter of luck. What kind of harvest there will be, no one can know. Meteor Street, East Side area. The wretched figure that I saw Huang Quan at the street corner followed him through the criss-crossing alleys, and finally stopped in front of a black house with a white wolf head carved on it. Boom, boom, boom. The cautious and urgent knock on the door showed the panic in his heart at this moment. Not long after, crunch, the black door suddenly opened. Zach, a stout man with yellow hair and a wolf tattoo on his face, looked at the slightly panicked figure at the door in surprise. Brew, didn't I arrange for you to collect supplies outside the street? Why did you come back suddenly? Zach, where is the boss? Blue, who looked slightly wretched, wiped the sweat from his face and asked hurriedly, I have something very important and I need to inform the boss immediately. The boss is exercising inside. After turning slightly sideways to let Blue in, Zach closed the door and followed Blue with some curiosity. What happened? What made you so nervous? Let's chat after seeing the boss. Wiping away the growing sweat, Blue quickened his pace and walked through the narrow hall to the training place deep on the right side of the room. Bang bang bang. As soon as he got closer and before he could open the door, the sound of violent collisions and hits reached Blue's ears. He has long been accustomed to this. Open the door gently. Suddenly, a wide chain cage appeared in front of him. Inside the iron chain cage, there were currently 6 or 7 shirtless men with bandaged hands striking the short figure between the cages fiercely. Violent thumps resounded throughout the training ground. However, the short figure who was hit fiercely did not fight back. Instead, he just raised his hands to protect his head, and the rest of his position was ignored to allow others to hit him. If someone approaches the short figure at this time, they will find that the expression on the other person's face is full of joy. It seems that no matter how you attack him, you can't cause him the slightest pain. Quite a while, as if feeling the weakening of the surrounding attacks, the joy of the short figure turned into impatience. The next moment, the raised arms were suddenly retracted. Swish. As if there was no need to accumulate force, the fist seals were like springs, rapidly bombarding the surrounding figures surrounding them. Ah! In an instant, screams came one after another. Figures one after another screamed in agony while holding the hit location, shrinking and rolling on the ground as if they were in unbearable pain. Seeing this situation, the short figure just glanced at it, then walked to the cage, picked up the wine glass and took a deep drink. Boss. Taking advantage of the previous fight, Blue came to the outside of the cage. Looking at the Shoggoth boss who looked like a dwarf but with a burly body, he said with a slightly restrained voice. Something happened. Shoggoth, who had a rough and arrogant face like a dwarf, put down the wine glass as big as a wine jar, and glanced at the submissive Blue with a look that seemed to be looking up but actually looking down. This was because Blue, who had always been afraid of him, seemed to be feeling tremendous pressure, and his body was actually trembling. Quote. Seeing the other party's reaction, Shoggoth nodded with satisfaction and said, Tell me, what happened? It's the news about Ma Quan. Noticing that the boss was staring at him again, Blue swallowed nervously, and quickly told all the news that he found out that the other party was not dead before going out on the street. Aren't these people dead? Hearing this, Shoggoth subconsciously touched the wolf fang necklace around his neck, with an extremely terrifying expression on his face. Where are they now? Since he's not dead, let's kill him again. Anyway, it's just a crawler that can be seen everywhere. The tone revealing murderous intent was filled with a sense of indifference. It seems that to him, no matter how many humans there are, they are just a bunch of fragile reptiles. Old boss. Feeling the frightening sense of oppression coming from the Shoggoths, Blue said nervously, Ma Quan is following Maki to collect supplies from the garbage mountain outside the East District Street. I don't know if there are others. If we take action, will it cause trouble to Crollo? Crollo. Hearing this name, a trace of fear and viciousness flashed in Shoggoth's eyes. Inform Crollo to gather people and monitor all movements on Crollo's side. After I deal with that brat Ma Quan, I'll deal with him. If Crollo still wants to take action after the person dies, then take this opportunity to deal with them and the spiders as well. Except for the 4 beasts at the top in the East District, we White Wolf are the most powerful. Yes, boss. At this time, Many garbage trucks loaded with garbage and waste are driving in various garbage areas as usual, dumping all kinds of garbage. As the world's garbage disposal place, no matter what kind of country it is, whether it is strong or weak, it will transport a lot of garbage that is not easy to process here. As time goes by, mountains of garbage have formed with Meteor Street as the center. Therefore, the residents of Meteor Street divide the garbage area according to the residential directions of the 4 districts: southeast, northwest and southeast. In each area, the distance of the garbage mountain is marked one by one with numbers. Outside the East District of Meteor Street, Garbage Mountain in District 8. Compared to the dense collection of scavengers in other areas, perhaps because there are fewer resources at the lower end of the number, there are only a handful of people here. At least for now, in Huang Quan's eyes, there are not many figures in this huge garbage mountain in District 8. Take it. Maki, who was walking in front, stopped and took out a pair of slightly worn protective gloves from the small purple package behind his back and handed them to Huang Quan. These garbage mountains are full of dangerous things such as industrial waste and some chemical residues. Don't be as reckless as before when rummaging through it. It's very dangerous. If you find anything useful, try to collect it. When the time comes, we will bring it back together. Good. Seeing both Maki and Shizuku put on their gloves, Huang Quan nodded, took the gloves and parted ways with them, walking towards the other direction of the garbage mountain. Perhaps because of the garbage that had just been dumped today, the overwhelming stench mixed with a strange smell turned the sky into a gray color. After thinking about it, Huang Quan used the method of winding to form a thick layer of transparent isolation armor in front of his nose without a gas mask or mask. As a result, instead of blocking the unconcealable smell, it actually made the sense of smell more sensitive. Feeling that the stench was getting stronger, Huang Quan rolled his eyes and immediately gave up the idea of using qi to cover up the smell. Let's look for it first to see if there are any spiritual tools. Think of this. After absorbing Ma Quan's memory, Huang Quan was naturally able to identify what kind of materials Maki and the others needed, and he continued to explore along the garbage mountain. I want to try to see if the throbbing feeling I had yesterday will still occur. In this way, as time passes by minute, Huang Quan's collection of supplies continues to increase. Although they were all broken electrical items and metal, they were enough to satisfy their food needs for the next 2 days. However, there has been no progress in the telepathy items he wanted to find. That's right, how can things attached to thoughts be discovered so easily? A trace of disappointment flashed in Huang Quan's eyes, and he shook his head slightly, ready to give up searching and concentrate on collecting supplies. Just because this garbage mountain has not been found does not mean that it cannot be found elsewhere. First collect the material needs to improve your life, and then consider other things. Thinking about it, Huang Quan's search atmosphere gradually extended towards the 9th district. Sudden, a throbbing feeling, like the electric current during an electric shock, suddenly appeared in Huang Quan's mind. Realizing this, Huang Quan suddenly looked in the direction where he came out to feel. It was a small garbage dump less than 5 meters away from him. The location is right between the 8th and 9th districts. Seeing this, Huang Quan walked like the wind, stepping over all kinds of garbage of different sizes, and quickly arrived at the 2-meter-high garbage pile. As the distance gets closer, Huang Quan could clearly feel the throbbing in his mind becoming more and more obvious. The emerald green spiral pattern, which he calls devil pattern, even stretches out. Is it a more powerful mental item than before? With such thoughts flashing through his mind, Huang Quan started rummaging through the garbage along with his throbbing feeling. Whichever side the feeling was stronger, he searched for that side. In this way, the 2-meter-high garbage pile quickly became shorter. Finally, when Huang Quan once again opened up the waste in front of him, what appeared in front of him was a broken gray shield with a rather strange appearance. The material of the gray shield resembles wood and iron, with a length and width between 50 centimeters and 70 centimeters. It is shaped like a slightly arced rhombus, but there are signs of breakage at the bottom of the rhombus. Shield. While doubts arose, Huang Quan touched it gently and picked it up. In an instant, the throbbing disappeared silently, and the devil patterns in his mind began to undergo strange bending changes. Imprisonment shield damaged. Quality: precious. Year: 688. Note: as the lifelong guardian weapon of the Verda people, it is also the belief of every Verda person. Those who hold this object will strengthen their physical defense at the cost of assimilating their will into the Verda people. Note: it is attached with the thoughts of the Verda tribe and can be absorbed. Oh, Shield of Imprisonment. Looking at the information displayed by Devil Pattern, Huang Quan looked thoughtful. What kind of obsession does this thought belong to? It is different from the catastrophic type of resentment, but at the cost of will assimilation, physical defense is enhanced. According to current understanding, the so-called enhancement should be the awakening of mind, right? It can be said that it is tasteless to eat and it is a pity to discard it. Furthermore, once thought is absorbed, this effect will definitely disappear. Touching the rough shield surface and the unique broken lines on the imprisonment shield, Huang Quan shook his head, concentrated his chi in his eyes, and looked at the gray shield carefully. Suddenly, a gray shimmer that seemed to be hidden quietly emerged from the surface of the shield. Perhaps because of the difference in size and intensity of Nian, this shimmer is several times greater than the black shimmer of the phone. Moreover, the vitality of this gray thought was far superior to that of the previous mobile phone, and there was even a faint tendency to contact and erode his body. If Huang Quan hadn't wrapped his hands with Tangle after discovering it, it would really be possible for the gray shimmer to undergo an undetectable assimilation bit by bit. People with strong emotions will often leave behind various obsessions in reality when they die. Love, hate, resentment, regret, hope, despair and other strong emotions. It is possible to form thoughts and attach them to objects or specific creatures, which naturally includes humans. When a certain thought is strong enough to a certain extent, its effects, whether good or bad, will have an impact on the people it comes into contact with. Just like this moment, the gray shield of imprisonment in Huang Quan's hand. Essentially, this kind of thought is a kind of strong thought. It may not have much impact on the weak, but if ordinary people are exposed to it for a long time, or be affected by thoughts resulting in the phenomenon of assimilation, awakening thoughts in the accumulation of probability within a certain period of time, either they cannot tolerate their assimilation, leading to mental illness, or they lose their fragile lives. The ability to absorb thoughts to strengthen one's body has been confirmed. Holding the shield of imprisonment, the thought of absorption came to Huang Quan's mind. Suddenly, the foggy gray light on the gray shield gathered towards Huang Quan's body and returned home, as if it was being pulled by some kind of force. For a moment, qi boiled like water vapor. Huang Quan can feel his qi expanding rapidly. If it was originally only the size of a table tennis ball or an egg, it has now expanded to the size of an adult's fist, more than doubling in size. Feel this. Huang Quan's usually calm expression showed a hint of smile, and his thoughts immediately turned to the devil marks in his mind. Power system. Nian. Enhancer. Thought capacity expansion by 3%. Conjurer. Thought capacity expansion by 2%. Transmuter. Thought capacity expansion by 3%. Emitter. Thought capacity expansion by 1%. Manipulator. 5% capacity expansion. Trait system. Thought capacity expansion 6%. Among them, Enhancer and Transmuter increased by 2% respectively. Other systems except Trait system increased by 1%, and Conjurer, Emitter, and Manipulator had no changes. To this, although Huang Quan is puzzled by its growth point, without more experimental materials at this stage, he can only summarize it in the tendency when forming obsessions. Maybe it's because the original owner of Nian prefers these systems, and the strengthening after absorption is like this, right? But doubts aside, staring at the shield of imprisonment in his hand, Huang Quan couldn't help but sigh at the power of the devil pattern. Not only does Nen possess the ability to be a natural exorcist, he can also use it to strengthen himself and accelerate his growth. To a certain extent, it is also very consistent with naming him Devil. I just don't know if it's worth the money. Seeing that the shield had become a little rustic after being absorbed, Huang Quan thought for a while, carried it casually, and then conducted a diffuse search along the surrounding area. However, it seemed that finding the imprisonment shield cost her all her luck today. As time flows, not to mention that there are no traces of chanting tools, there are even very few scrap electrical appliances worth recycling. Seeing this, Huang Quan shook his head, carrying his shield and some rusty metal plates, and walked towards the place where the collected objects were piled up. Garbage mountains are, after all, places where garbage accumulates. Even with the garbage dumped by all the countries in the world, it still cannot hide the nature of it as a garbage dump. I want to find more items with Nyen. The most accurate positioning should be those collectors. Only those people would call ancient things antiques and collect them in various ways. Among antiques and rare treasures, there may be more spiritual items. It seems that if there is a chance to become a hunter in the future, the antique hunter may be a good choice. Pulling back his thoughts of running away, Huang Quan rubbed his eyebrows, stopped and looked around to identify the direction. At this moment, he is still within the scope of the 9th district. Because of the slightly anticipated exploration just now, we were still a few hundred meters away from the garbage mountain in District 8. You have to go back quickly, otherwise the gathering time will come. After looking at the gray sky and roughly judging the time, Huang Quan turned around and walked towards the northeast corner. Obviously, he was a little lost in the extremely similar garbage mountain. However, he didn't get very far. Despair. The footsteps disappeared instantly, and Huang Quan, who seemed to feel some kind of dangerous aura, looked calmly and alertly at the corner of the garbage shrouded in a sense of crisis. There was a sudden sound of surprise coming from the garbage corner that was supposed to be deserted. Immediately afterwards, a short, burly man with a beard and a boxer's outfit slowly stepped out of the corner with a surprised expression and looked at Huang Quan, who was standing warily in the distance. "Ma Quan kid, how did you find me?" White Wolf, Shoggoth. The moment he saw the other person's figure, memories related to him emerged in Huang Quan's mind. White Wolf Shoggoth, the leader of the White Wolf gang. Originally, they belonged to a small and unpopular gang in the East District of Meteor Street. Since Shoggoth took over the White Wolf gang half a year ago, it has annexed several equal forces in a short period of time, thus expanding faster and faster. As of now, it can be regarded as the more powerful gangster among the countless power groups under the Four Beasts. However, there are no Shoggoths that he has ever interacted with. Why does it suddenly appear here? As the boss of a force, it is obvious that he does not need to rely on recycled items to make a living. Moreover, from the special use of Ju just now to hide in the corner, plus the first sentence when it appeared. So, is his target himself? Combining existing information. Was this guy responsible for Ma Quan's death? For a time, his thoughts were running at a high speed. Huang Quan's expression became calmer and calmer, and the eyes he looked at the Shoggoths became more and more indifferent. This is the second time. Shoggoth, really? Hearing Huang Quan's calm response, a frightening and cruel smile appeared on Shoggoth's face. Have you discovered it? 3 months ago, Charo should have let Charo twist off your head. Against the background of his beard, his expression looked very dark. Coupled with his cruel eyes, a trace of murderous aura was pressing towards Huang Quan's position. Quote. Feeling the pressure of murderous intent, Huang Quan frowned. His body was already in a tense posture, and then he calmly asked the doubts he had been having. Why, are you trying to kill me again and again? Ha, do you still need a reason to kill? As if he heard a very fallacious question, Shoggoth subconsciously pressed the wolf fang necklace around his neck, and immediately a look of cruelty and madness appeared in his eyes. Ma Quan brat, if you don't want to die in pain, just stick out your neck and let me break it. The words were not spoken. The dark aura erupted from Shouja's body from the inside out. That kind of dark aura that obviously contains qi. In an instant, Huang Quan, who was not far away, retreated towards the post-test as if his body was electrocuted. This is a subconscious and instinctive reaction of living creatures when faced with danger. Obviously, the Shoggoth who integrated his emotions and will into his aura was superior to Huang Quan at this moment in terms of aura and physical fitness. Meanwhile, Huang Quan observes Octavia. He also noticed Shoggoth's subconscious movements in an instant. Especially the wolf fang necklace worn around the other person's neck immediately awakened previously forgotten memories. So it's because of it. Relying on his scattered memories to connect the events together, Huang Quan, who obtained the answer, instantly dispersed all irrelevant thoughts and no longer dwelled on them. The enemy in front of him clearly wants to kill him here. It would be too unwise to dwell on other things. After all, the lion still needs all his strength to beat the rabbit. When the overall strength is inferior to the opponent, what Huangquan can do is to take advantage of all the advantages around him to defeat the enemy in front of him. Kill. Ta ta ta. Shrouded in murderous intent, the Shoggoth slowly approached Huangquan with a ferocious smile. Since awakening Nian, this is his favorite process. Watching the other person die bit by bit in pain, fear, and wailing. This is such an exciting and enjoyable thing. Thinking of the scene that followed, Shoggoth licked his lower lips and looked at Huangquan with murderous intent in his eyes. Killing intent. Murderous look. Even other strong emotions have always been nothing. They are not entities, but have similar effects to entities to some extent. Just like this moment, the Shoggoths were filled with murderous intent, and their consciousness was filled with strong emotions that wanted to torture and kill Huangquan. Through the aura formed by Qi, the thoughts and emotions are integrated into it, thereby forming an effect that is several times stronger and affects the senses of others. At this time, Huangquan, who was enveloped by the opponent's aura, could clearly feel the invisible tingling sensation, which was transmitted from the touch on the skin to the auditory nerve in the brain. As if he had an illusion, the stinging murderous aura was like a sharp knife, piercing him over and over again. At the same time, these slight tingling sensations also reminded Huangquan the danger level of the other party and the determination to kill him. Ta ta ta. As the other party gets closer, the crisis Huangquan feels becomes more obvious. Finally, Tang. In an instant, Qi emitted from Huangquan's body, and was tightly bound by will while boiling, wrapping around his body, forming a transparent armor. Suddenly, although the sense of crisis still existed, it was reduced to the minimum impact when Tang formed the coverage. In the final analysis, there is still a gap in strength between the two sides. If Huangquan's aura at this moment is higher than the opponent's, then the one shrouded in the aura will be the cruel-looking Shoggoth. Oh, I really underestimate you. He was surprised by the other party's sudden display of thoughts, but the cruel sneer of the Shoggoths remained unchanged. From the uneven tangle on the other party's body, he already knew the extent of the other party's Nian. As the four basic application skills in Nen, the use of Tang is often the most basic. Even with this technique, it still has an uneven shape when used. This was obviously telling him that the other party had just crossed the threshold of reading. Kid, do you think this level of reading can last you a few more seconds? The words just fell. The short and burly figure of the Shoggoth suddenly broke out into a surprise attack. Bang! Various kinds of garbage were scattered and dented under his feet, and his burly figure quickly approached Huangquan with a boxer-like thrust. Seeing this situation, Huangquan looked calm, and under the influence of Tang, his thin body with greatly improved flexibility retreated towards a fixed point behind him. Relying on the route he had memorized when he came here, it was as if there were eyes on the back of his head, using all kinds of large garbage and waste as obstacles to hinder the Shoggoth's sprint speed. Bang bang bang. The garbage that caused obstacles along the way was knocked down and thrown away by the covered Qi Shoggoths. For Shoggoth, who has always been fighting in the ring and even between gangs, the terrain here did have some impact on him. But looking at Huangquan, who was getting closer and closer in front of him, the Shoggoth's irritable expression turned into cruelty again. Out of the way. As long as he encounters it once, this nasty little mouse will stop thinking about escaping. The torture before death begins with crushing his legs. Swish, swish, swish. Huangquan's thin figure quickly weaves through the complex garbage terrain. Environment, terrain, speed, distance. All aspects that can be considered or analyzed in Huangquan's thinking. Only by seizing every advantage can we gain the upper hand in this battle. However, the two sides are getting closer and closer. Let Huangquan completely give up the idea of delaying the war. You must find a way to find out whether the opponent has Nen and what the characteristics of the ability are. Think of this. Observing that the Shoggoth's impact speed slowed down to the expected stage of charging, Huangquan's retreating figure suddenly paused, and Qi suddenly burst out through the aura nodes all over his body. Especially the aura nodes under the feet, the Qi is thicker than other positions. Open black lens bracket practice close black lens bracket. The next moment, boom, trash splattered under his feet. Huangquan paused for less than 1 second. Driven by the burst of Qi, Huang Quan's thin figure rushed towards the Shoggoths like an inspired arrow. Kid, that's not what practice is for. In the blink of an eye, Huang Quan's running figure came in front of him. The Shoggoth sneered and disdained, and while charging up his power, the burly figure leaned to the right. In a fraction of a second, Huang Quan dodged the sharp metal hidden in his sleeves. It's unimaginably slow. While sneering, the Shoggoths ducked sideways and quickly struck Huang Quan's waist as he passed by with his spring-like right arm. At the moment of the strike, a skin-colored half-finger fist glove that looked like needles appeared out of thin air between the 5 fingers of his right hand. He tried to drive the needles on it into Huang Quan's body by stabbing him. See this. Huang Quan, who had not yet given up the force, his pupils shrank sharply, and at the cost of spraining his waist, he forcibly changed the direction of the force, twisting his body to avoid the needle's thrust. But because the distance is too short, although Huang Quan barely avoided the needle, he was unable to avoid the next close elbow attack from the Shoggoth. Boom! With the violent collision, Huang Quan, who used his left forearm to block the elbow attack in time, was still unable to resist the powerful power of the Shoggoth and was directly knocked away from the low altitude. Boom! Huang Quan was able to stop until he hit a large garbage pile not far away. Cough! Coughing all over, Huang Quan suppressed his slight dizziness and still focused on the Shoggoth to prevent him from suddenly disappearing. If he hadn't used entrapment to protect himself in time, Huang Quan believed that the left arm he used to resist would have been shattered under such an attack. However, at this time, the opponent's nen has been exposed in the short-circuit collision just now. From the appearance of needle-punching gloves out of thin air, it is obvious that it is directly related to the manipulator. But we can't rule out the possibility that it's some kind of trait system. Thinking of this, Huang Quan tightened his body and maintained the tangle, looking directly at the Shoggoth, revealing that there must be a hidden temptation. You should be from manipulator Shoggoth. Oh, have you discovered it? Surprisingly, when faced with Huang Quan's question, Shoggoth had no hidden intention at all, but responded directly to his answer. Seeing this, Huang Quan looked calm and had no disturbance in his heart. The other party answered me so definitely. Or he has already regarded himself as a dead person. After all, the dead will always shut up and keep secrets. Either that or the other party has another powerful trump card. Thinking about it, Huang Quan glanced at the needle-punching glove on the Shoggoth's right hand that was very similar to his dark skin color. If you didn't look carefully, you might just think that the opponent's hand shape was weird. Could it be that the opponent's confidence comes from the needles on the gloves? What kind of effects will there be after being pricked by a needle? A series of thoughts kept flashing through Huang Quan's mind. What, are you curious about its effect? As if he guessed what Huang Quan was thinking at this time, the Shoggoth licked the needles on his gloves and slowly approached Huang Quan. Do you know what I most want to do with my thought after I awakened thought half a year ago? Pain. Only extreme pain can bring me ultimate pleasure. You know, every day when I am at the bottom of Meteor Street, I keep thinking about how I can clearly convey my pain and despair to others. Do you understand? I can only feel the same. The cruel look on the Shoggoth's face became more intense. It is the best compliment to pain. Only by giving all your pain to others will the belated joy come to you in multiples. Ah, it's like a drug addiction, only it can give me unreserved pleasure when I'm in pain. Having said this, the Shoggoths gently stroked the needle on the glove on his right hand, looking intoxicated and confused. The cold light displayed by the needle indicates how sharp it is. Before you die, take a closer look at it. Pain counterattacker, this is the name I gave it. What a beautiful state. As long as it is there, all the pain in the world will turn into pleasure. As soon as he finished speaking, the Shoggoth suddenly stepped forward quickly, closing the distance between him and Huang Quan. He hid his right arm behind his back, ready to attack. Cowardly, ugly. At this time, after listening to what the other party said, Huang Quan's first thought came to his mind. Even when he saw someone approaching with a scary look, his eyes were still calm. If there was any change, perhaps it was the indifference that appeared in his pupils. Nen is so useless, so disappointing. The change in consciousness even affects the aura. Although Huang Quan's chi quantity is not large and has a small range, at this moment he can control the manifestation chi quantity outside his body extremely calmly. The aura of murderous intent that originally affected him a little suddenly became like a gentle caressing wind, without any sense of oppression or danger before. No matter what the enemy's purpose is, the most important thing now is to survive and deal with the opponent. Huang Quan is calm and focused, with thoughts running rapidly in his mind. Judging from the short-circuit contact just now, although the opponent's energy and skills are higher than his, the gap is not obvious. After all, he had already absorbed 2 mental tools before. The increased Qi is at least worth a month or 2 of hard training. The gap at this stage, apart from Qi and skill, the most important thing is that the opponent has developed Nen. Although with his current knowledge system, he can only determine the opponent's ability and characteristic preference manipulator but cannot analyze the opponent's own attribute preference in a short period of time. Therefore, the key to determining the outcome of this game is the characteristic gate possessed by his Nian. Think of this. Perhaps under the pressure between life and death, Huang Quan's tangle progressed at a speed visible to the naked eye, from uneven to a stage of balanced distribution. Facing the Shoggoth's fast and close blows like a boxer, Huang Quan focused most of his attention on the opponent's needle-pricking gloves. As for the other hands and feet, he tried his best to use tangle when he couldn't avoid it in time. Block defense. Bang bang bang, accompanied by violent collisions and hammering sounds. The Shoggoth's expression became more and more excited, and the slightest sense of joy had already appeared in his heart, and his expression even screamed out with a terrifying laughter. Very good, very good. Hurry up. If you only have this strength, just wait until I beat you to pieces. Jia ha 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 ha. To this, Huang Quan's calm expression did not change much. Under the effect of entangle while defending and dodging the opponent's attacks, you are also constantly observing the opponent's weaknesses. At the same time, a small part of Qi is condensed into the eyes to prevent the other party from using unexpected abilities and techniques. Bang 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 bang. Fists and knees. Legs and elbows. Thin and burly body. During the close combat, everyone used their own fighting skills. However, compared to the Shoggoth who was skilled in killing and boxing, Huang Quan, who had only practiced some grappling and fighting skills as a soldier before traveling through time, was still far behind him. However, at this moment, under the influence of Tang, Huang Quan's fighting skills were rapidly improving at a speed visible to the naked eye, and some complicated and useless movements were quickly forgotten and discarded by him. After all, now is a desperate situation between life and death, once attacked by the opponent's Nen. Huang Quan didn't know what the consequences would be, but he knew very well that the final result would be death. Even death. You must not die in the hands of this ugly guy. The outcome is yet to be decided. In an instant, Huang Quan's pupils shrank, and with the help of the large garbage on the right, he sideways dodged another needle attack from the Shoggoth, and his mind kept running at high speed. I stayed close for so long without activating other Nen. Acupuncture gloves that manifest themselves from pain. Ability characteristics that require piercing the enemy's body through needle pricks. The weird behavior of being the first to tell the shortcomings of one's abilities when fighting an enemy. Is it a mechanism that triggers abilities or a mechanism that enhances abilities? Many factors derived from battles and observations were combined at high speed in Huang Quan's mind. In an instant, the key points of victory and defeat suddenly flashed in Huang Quan's mind after all the factors were combined. The key to victory or defeat. At this, Huang Quan, who had been in a state of being beaten, suddenly burst into flames, and the aura nodes all over his body were opened wide. Using practice as the application technique, the potential Qi was mixed with the revealed Qi and spewed out towards the whole body in the form of a vapor compression explosion. Out. What? The Shoggoth, who was affected by the sudden large amount of Qi, changed his expression, thinking that Huang Quan would use this to retreat and distance himself from him. However, what he didn't expect was Huang Quan, whose whole body was bursting with ferocious Qi, unexpectedly moved closer without retreating in an instant. With the help of the explosion in a short distance, Huang Quan's thin figure was in front of the Shoggoths in the blink of an eye. Stupid brat. Seeing this situation, Shoggoth realized that the opportunity was coming. A trace of cruelty flashed in his eyes. His right hand, which was already ready to strike, used the power of the needle with the fist glove to stab Huang Quan's head straight like a compressed spring. Kid, rejoice. Death is more impossible than life. Aha! In an instant, Huang Quan, who deliberately turned his head to the opponent's right arm, saw that the Shoggoth was just as expected, and still chose to attack his head with Nen at the critical moment. When the four-part force that was about to be reserved penetrated the neck and the head was pierced by the needle, he suddenly swung to the right to dodge. Puff! During the intersection, a trace of bright red blood flowed down from Huang Quan's left cheek. Obviously, even though he was well prepared, he was still injured by the opponent's amazing attack speed like a compressed spring. However, injuries are also included in Huang Quan's calculations. Huang Quan, who didn't care about feeling the sharp pain that spread rapidly at the wound, looked calm and focused, and punched the opponent's heart with a right straight shot long before the opponent attacked. Suddenly, it turned into an upright hand knife with 5 fingers together, covered with a transparent white 5-finger glove. Suffer all the pain. Seeing that the Shoggoth had only scratched the opponent's cheek, he had no time to dodge the opponent's attack, but his expression remained cruel. While activating his ability with all his strength, he used Tangle to concentrate the chi on his chest as much as possible to avoid further damage. At the same time, be prepared to withstand this blow and then torture the opponent to your heart's content. After wasting so long, it's finally the moment of joy. Call out. The piercing hand knife was like lightning, piercing the heart covered by chi. Open the door. The moment he felt his fingertips touch the opponent's chest, Huang Quan, who endured the severe pain, activated the gate characteristic in his Nian without expression. In an instant, a door of flesh and blood was formed on the chest skin outside the Shoggoth's heart from the outside in. Feeling this, the sword in Huang Quan's right hand wrapped around chi instantly penetrated the beating heart of the Shoggoth with lightning speed. Phew! Before the Shoggoths could react, Huang Quan pulled out the heart that was pierced in two, accompanied by bright red blood. So far, Huang Quan, who was expressionless and calm, knelt down on one knee with a pale expression and was in unbearable pain. The protruding veins on his forehead and face showed how much pain he was suffering at this moment. It was a severe pain, dozens of times more painful than toothache. It was as if countless ants were biting all over his body. In just a moment, Huang Quan couldn't help but turn pale and sweat. If his current mental will were not strong enough, the painful screams would have resounded throughout the world. However, compared to Huang Quan, the Shoggoth who was still standing, his cruel and excited eyes had turned into confusion and disbelief. He never thought that he, who was about to win this unequal battle, would die so easily in the hands of a brat. Careless, main idea, in the situation where intention is better than lack of intention. Unrevealed ability intelligence often determines victory or defeat in an instant. Just like this moment, the moment the Shoggoths concluded that Huang Quan had not yet developed Nen, his flaw was already revealed. And whether you can seize this momentary flaw means the key to victory or defeat. Fortunately, the most important key point, at the critical moment, was discovered by Huang Quan, and he took advantage of the situation to guide the opponent's flaws, thus deciding life and death. Open black lens bracket door, close black lens bracket. Feeling that the severe pain gradually subsided, Huang Quan, who was pale, looked up at the blood-red heart that was pierced in half in his hand, and the Shoggoth who was standing there with his pupils beginning to expand. In this regard, Huang Quan's pale expression remained calm, without the expected feeling of vomiting. Perhaps it's because of the absorption of Ma Quan's memory fragments. He found that his view of death was getting weaker and weaker. If he had never killed anyone before time travel, or even killed a chicken, how could he be holding someone else's heart and turning a blind eye now? People are going to change. After all the pain in his body dissipated, Huang Quan slowly stood up and placed his heart on the right hand where the needles of the Shoggoth's fist had disappeared. In his mind, he was constantly reviewing the series of battles that had occurred in just a few seconds. Although Huang Quan passed the test yesterday and understood the basic characteristics and effects of door, tests were conducted on limited materials such as cement walls, wooden furniture, floors, air, etc. But whether he could open the door in a human body, he was a little confused at first whether he could do it. However, the opportunity cannot be missed. Transforming passivity into initiative, Huang Quan has only one thought in his will at the critical moment of life and death. That is, use his chest and chi as a door to push open. Only in this way will the opponent's fragile internal organs and heart be the key to his death. Facts also prove this. Nian, which turned into transparent white finger cots, did indeed turn the Shoggoth's flesh and blood into a gate as he wished, thus allowing him to determine the outcome. However, the only thing that makes Huang Quan think is the essential characteristics of gate may be somewhat different from what he imagined. For example, when he opened the Shoggoth's chest door, he found that the open chest showed no signs of damage, and not even a trace of blood flowed out. Whether it is the several flesh and blood thresholds that form the sliding doors on both sides, or the dividing lines in the middle of the door, they all show the characteristics of the door, and there is no concept of destruction. It is more like some kind of spatial quality that solidifies the formation of the door into a spatial cross-section. Moreover, when the chest was turned into a door and opened, Huang Quan instantly noticed that there was no pain or other reaction on the Shoggoth's expression. This means that during the process of opening the door cannot cause other damage to the things that form the door. Is it just opening the door? No. There should be other characteristics. Huang Quan wiped the blood on his right hand and thought about the door-related information in his mind. At this time, how did you do it? The Shoggoth, whose pupils dilated and his eyes gradually dimmed, held his broken heart and struggled to squeeze out his confusion from his throat. Don't think so much about people who are about to die. Huang Quan, whose thoughts were interrupted, raised his head and glanced at Shoggoth, whose face was ashen and exuding a look of death, and said calmly, "Villains often die from talking too much. If you want to know, just come to me with resentment. Just kill me. The answer you want will come naturally. Kid, I curse you." Before he finished speaking, the Shoggoth, who had lost a lot of blood and lost all vitality, stared at Huang Quan intently amidst the last vicious curses, with all the remaining resentment in his eyes. See this. Huang Quan slowly took a few steps back and stared at the body of Shoggoth. The reason why I just said that. One is that they really don't want to expose their abilities and characteristics to avoid other accidents. The two wanted to see if stimulating the other person's strong emotions before his or her death would lead to extreme obsessions after his or her death. Not long after, buzz, an invisible hum spreads. The dark gas quickly gathered on the Shoggoth's body and turned into smoke. Then there was a pause for a second, as if he was watching and looking for a target. When he discovered Huang Quan's figure, he seemed to be very excited and shot straight towards Huang Quan like a snake. See this. Huang Quan, who originally wanted to avoid observation first, felt the familiar throbbing in his heart, and immediately stopped, facing the dark gas calmly. Call out. This moment of slight stagnation caused the dark gas to quickly submerge into Huang Quan's body. Next moment, the devil patterns in his mind stretched out, and the strange patterns changed rapidly. Vicious resentment can be absorbed. Oh, is this resentment? A smile appeared on Huang Quan's face. Sure enough, it was similar to what he expected. Before death, if the elderly have extreme emotions, the probability of experiencing various thoughts is much higher than that of ordinary people. Is it resentment caused by extreme emotions such as resentment, curses, and unwillingness due to what I said before? If I leave here before this resentment forms, will she look for someone or something nearby to attach herself to? It's very possible. Thinking of this, Huang Quan looked calm, looked at the Shoggoth's wide eyes, and said indifferently, "It's really difficult for you to contribute to me even though you are already dead, Shoggoth. Since you are so hospitable, I won't be polite." As soon as he finished speaking, the thought of absorption came up. The chi that was about to be exhausted quickly returned to a full state, and then expanded rapidly. Soon, there was only chi the size of a fist in the body, which expanded to the size of 2 apples. The increase in potential energy also enhances the external manifest energy. At least in terms of aura. The aura that could only cover the whole body could now spread to about 2 meters. At the same time, devil pattern is also changing rapidly until it is fixed. Power system. Nian. Enhancer. Thought capacity expansion 3%, 4%. Conjurer. Thought capacity expansion 2%, 3%. Transmuter. Thought capacity expansion 3%, 4%. Emitter. Thought capacity expansion 1%, 2%. Manipulator. Reading capacity expansion 5%, 10%. Trait system. Thought capacity expansion 6%, 7%. 1% added to all. Manipulator has been increased to 10%. Seeing this situation, Huangquan couldn't help but shrink his pupils. Unexpectedly, just one kind of resentment surpassed the amount of both absorbed before. Is it because resentment has not passed with time? Or is there a bonus factor of nervous qi? There are still other things that I can't understand. Just when Huangquan was lost in thought, the capacity expansion of manipulator reaches 10%, and the restriction and oath +1. The emerald green devil pattern suddenly extended, and the information displayed from it made Huangquan stunned. Well, when the value reaches 10%, restraint and oath can be added once. Huangquan was surprised when he saw the information about the devil pattern in his mind, and his eyes revealed a thoughtful look. Restrictions and oaths. In order to formulate rules, make an oath to your heart and abide by them. The more expensive the rules, the more powerful ability characteristics and effects they can feedback. From this point of view, according to Huangquan's understanding, it is more like an equivalent exchange to a certain extent. However, this kind of equivalent exchange will appear particularly idealistic to some enlightened people. When studying Hunter before, Huangquan discovered the difference between restrictions and oaths and equivalent exchange. It seems that the stronger the will, the lower the cost. Of course, in essence it is still equivalent exchange. Whether it is unequal or not depends on how the person makes restrictions and oaths. Think of this. Huangquan glanced at the devil pattern that appeared in his mind, and the information displayed on it had not dissipated. Constraints and oaths +1. Does this mean that I can have more choices in the development direction of my own thoughts? So far, perhaps it was the influence of the devil fruit consumed before traveling, combined with the rules of this world, that caused changes that Huangquan was unaware of. At least, the door fruit, which was supposed to be developed with the imagination, can only have the characteristics of the door when Huangquan uses Nian. To be precise, it should be the two ability effects of opening the door and closing the door. In other aspects, Huangquan also tried many times yesterday and failed countless times. It can be said that it has no effect at all. So, this means that if you want to develop other effects of gate, you must use restraints and oaths to set and develop according to the rules of this world. Huangquan, who had tried various methods yesterday, was still thinking about what kind of restrictions and oaths to carry out. As a result, he experienced a life and death fight. Suddenly I discovered that devil pattern will add restraint and oath after expanding the thought capacity of its 6 systems. This is indeed a very unexpected surprise. I just don't know if there are any restrictions on the added restrictions and oaths. After all, it was added from the expansion of manipulator. Whether it can be restricted in other systems is still unknown. I'll try it when I have time. After calculating the time required for the gathering, Huangquan glanced at the dead Shoggoth and observed the surrounding environment. Seeing a cabinet-shaped piece of garbage buried in a garbage pile nearby, he immediately dragged Shoggoth's body to the dilapidated and twisted cabinet. Open the door. As Huangquan's right hand covering Nian was tapped on the side of the twisted cabinet, a round door half a man's height suddenly appeared on the surface of the cabinet. Crunch. Huangquan opened the door and looked inside. Some garbage and a small space were enough to stuff a body. Thinking of this, Huangquan pulled off the wolf fang necklace from the Shoggoth's neck, and then searched it. Seeing that there was nothing valuable on him, he stuffed it directly into the cabinet. Open black lens bracket, close the door, close black lens bracket. When Huangquan's thoughts dispersed, the circular door on the side of the garbage cabinet disappeared in an instant, and the surface of the garbage cabinet returned to its original appearance full of dirt. Dispose of the body calmly and calmly. Bang bang. After cleaning the blood and dirt on his hands and body, Huangquan calmly picked up the imprisonment shield that he had thrown away not far away, and then quickly returned to the waste accumulation point collected in District 8. Huangquan tied up the garbage with worn-out wires and had enough energy to drag items twice as big as himself towards the rock area meeting point. Not long after, when he arrived at the meeting point, it was still empty. Seeing this situation, Huangquan was not surprised. There are still about 20 minutes until the gathering time, so it is normal for no one to be there. Just to test my previous ideas. After thinking about it, Huang Quan put down the things in his hands, casually sat down on the rock next to him, and began to think and analyze his own abilities and characteristics in his mind. Door currently only has the characteristics of open and close. Although it can open the door on any object or flesh and blood, it must be touched by thought. To put it simply, he has to touch the target with the place covered by thought, and then the target will form various types of doors and then open them. But, judging from current use, the characteristic of being able to open various doors seems to have no lethality. This was clearly revealed in the battle just now. To a certain extent, if it were not for the test of Mizumi style and the display of devil pattern. I have determined that I prefer manipulator and trait system first. Huang Quan will most likely affirm that he prefers conjurer. Because only conjurer is the best at changing the nature and shape of qi. Maybe it's because of the trait system. After all, trait system will not be restricted by the Nen attribute system when exerting its ability effects. After all, everyone has their own areas of expertise. Just like enhancer, as long as you specialize in this, you can get twice the result with half the effort. If you set up and develop other systems that are opposite to this, the result will only be that your own memory capacity, that is to say, thought capacity and talent, will be wasted by occupying space bit by bit. Only, in this regard, Huang Quan, who has devil marks, has already naturally escaped the limitations of Nen system. As long as the Nian absorbed in the future is sufficient and the Nian capacity of other systems is continuously expanded, one's own Nen will naturally not be limited. Moreover, even if there is no devil mark, as a trait type Huang Quan, depending on the ability he was born with, he can also combine the attribute advantages of other types bit by bit in the later stage. This is the advantage of the trait system, which is extremely rare among Nin people. Take the characteristics of door as an example. Transforming an object into a door through contact and maintaining it in an open state covers the attribute characteristics of manipulator, conjurer, emitter, and transmuter. Of course, this is just coverage. If you want to highlight the effect of a certain aspect of ability, you usually need to set up various harsh restriction conditions. Just like this moment, Huang Quan wants to add enhanced versatility and upper limits to Gate S abilities. For example, making the door possess a certain degree of lethality, or perhaps broadening the distance, size, scope, or type of the door. To achieve such a goal, the only thing that can be done is to set restrictions. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.